Good morning, everybody. It's a real honour to be here again. It's a place that I hold very special in my heart. So I'm really happy to be sharing this morning a little bit about my knowledge, a little bit about my understanding, and a little bit about my truth. When it comes to spiritualism, spiritualism is a religion, it's a philosophy, and it's a science. So with that philosophy part, it comes in with the address or the talk that I'm just about to give you at this time. So that's the philosophy, that's the teachings, that's our basis. And it's lovely to be, when you think about the philosophy of spiritualism, and you're all here this morning, so with the philosophy it can touch many people's hearts with maybe something that I say today. It might resonate and sit within your heart there. Whereas obviously with the science part of our religion, which is a demonstration of mediumship, other religions may believe in life after death, whereas spiritualism proves life after death. So that's but I can only really get to a very few number of you this morning. So that's why the philosophy part of our religion is very important. And I just want to say those songs that you've sung today, very British songs, and it, it actually reminded me of how far I am away from home, because where the Beatles, originated from was the lovely city of Liverpool, and my daughter lives in that lovely city of Liverpool. So it's like, I miss them, but I don't. I'm pleased to be here as well. I'll soon be home, so I've got to enjoy the moment. Now, whenever I get the opportunity, I suppose, to give an address, a talk, I always go to the spirit world. What is it you want me to talk about today? And then it's almost like they give me something to talk about, and then I build a theme around that. So the word that I got from spirit was change. Yeah, so I found a lovely quote, actually, so I'm going to share that quote with you. That sometimes life puts a pebble in your shoe, and you can either put up with the uncomfortable feeling, or you can take that shoe off and get rid of that pebble. I thought that was quite profound. I thought, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Life can put something like a little stone, a pebble in your shoe. We can walk around thinking, that really hurts. Or we can think, I'm going to take that shoe off and get rid of that pebble. And I think that really is about our decisions that we make in life, our choices that we make in life. We're all faced with many challenges. That's human nature. That's what part of life is. We all have choices of how we're going to choose to overcome those choices. And it's always a good idea just to look at the bigger picture, because sometimes we feel, maybe when we think about something that's happened to us, something that we can't get over, something that's really changed us, it's up to us then to make those choices in what is right for us. What can we do? What can we do to get over that? Or what can I learn from that? What's the learning point in what I've just been through? It's important to learn, isn't it, and to change. And change can be hard. We can be really resilient to change, can't we? We can think, I think back to the times when I think it was it 2020, around that time? Is this okay? It feels a little bit. We can think back to the time when COVID hit, can't we? When we think of change, how, we thought about it, we were resilient to that change. But actually, sometimes change is as good as a rest. And I know when Suzanne said that my time here was my third year, well, actually, it wasn't, because I came here just before COVID. Me and my daughter flew over knowing that we were going into lockdown. We were coming to do the parks, but I was coming to Cassadaga. I was going to be doing a service and supposed to be then at that time maybe doing some readings or whatever they had planned for me. However, as we flew over the Atlantic, the government, I think it was Trump at that time, decided to shut the borders. So I'm thinking, okay, I was expecting, are they going to turn the plane around? So they didn't. We landed in Orlando. And by the third day, I'm still wanting to serve the church. I still want to come to Cassadaga. On the Tuesday, this lady, we were having pizza, and she said, we need to go and talk to that lady there, because, we've just heard that they're setting 3 aeroplanes, 3 flights home to get back to England on the Wednesday. I was like, no, that means I can't come and do the messaging service. So we went and phoned the the travel agent, and they said, well, they're on their computer, and it's like, we've got one seat left on those 3 planes. I said, well, I'm not going. I said, because I'm not going without my daughter, and she's not going without me. So I said, what else have you got for me? So those 3 flights were all full. They said, okay, we can do you from Orlando to Atlanta to home. I said, what's the turnaround? They're saying, well, it's like 40 minutes. I said, that's impossible. What else have you got? And they said, well, we can take you home on the Thursday. You can go from Orlando to JFK to home. I went, I'll take it. So, well, I asked what the turnaround, it was doable. So in that way, I got to fulfill my I suppose it was a dream, really. When I first heard about Cassadaga, I've been coming to Orlando for many years, and I thought, well, I've never heard of this place until I saw a TV program, and I thought, well, I really need to go to that place. I won't unfold the whole story for you. But again, what I'm trying to say here is, like, I got to fulfill that dream, and I got to fulfill coming to Cassadaga for the first time. So that was really special. So that was actually my first time here, and I did get to do the messaging service. So I feel that Spirit also have a hand in an outcome of what we want in life too. So we have to always remember that we have that guiding influence from the spirit world. So as we arrived at the airport on the Thursday, the last plane that was supposed to fly out on the Wednesday was actually cancelled. So it's a good job we wasn't on there, because something technical happened, so they didn't fly home to the Thursday anyway. So what I'm trying to say there, that change can be put upon us. Sometimes in life we cannot change things. They just happen. They're out of our control. And when I think, actually, when I said about change being as good as a rest, it really is. Because what I was able to do, and I'm sure many of you was able to do, I reevaluated my life. I reevaluated it in a way to feel what was important to me. Now, before COVID, everything seems to be before COVID and after COVID. Have you noticed that? Yes, so before COVID, I would have been out maybe every night of the week, serving churches. If I wasn't serving a church, I'd be demonstrating at another church. I'd be doing healing every Wednesday, sitting in circles, teaching and everything like that. I was actually on burnout, and I didn't even realise it. So what I was able to do through that change being forced upon me, I was able to reevaluate what was important in my life, cut back on things, stop putting myself through burnout, start putting my own energy first. So actually, it was a good thing that change came. So that's why sometimes to be resilient to change, it's a good thing too. It can be as good as a rest. And also there's a Wayne Dyer, he says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it can be, when we think of maybe losing a loved one, maybe that is a change that we have to make. I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't through my experiences, if it wasn't through somebody that I lost to the spirit world. I didn't even know that spiritualism was a religion. I didn't. That was my naivety at that stage. I thought spiritualism was a place where you went to and you got messages from your loved ones. I didn't know it was a religion. And like, within your movement with, at Cassadaga, you have the principles of what you go by. I used to go to the spiritual church week after week, and I used to be intrigued. What do they mean? What is all these principles? We have 7 very basic principles. What are they? What do they mean to me? And it started me getting curious, and started me, wanting to learn and find out. And through that sensation, of wanting to find out, it's then wanting to impart and help others. Changing my life actually for the better. So when I think about the sadness that I went through, and I'm sure many of you have been through similar journeys, when I went through the saddest time of my life, it was almost like the spirit world threw me a lifeline, and they pulled me out of that deep, deep sadness. And I think when we think about that, and it's like it's there to really help guide us and help really make our lives better, for the betterment. So going through some sad times in life, we have to experience the bad. We have to go through that. We have to change our thinking. Now, we're not all going to cope with things the same way because we're all different. And through what I experienced, I remember people saying to me, oh, if I'd gone through what you went through, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. Some people may turn to other forms of, products maybe that will help them cope throughout the day. People find their way of coping. Whereas, I decided to actually, in a way, to look at the things, to look at the world in a positive light and not in a negative light. Because, again, we can all look at things differently. So through that process and through what I went through, I wanted to then put what my experiences into service, into serving mankind. So when I didn't even know what healing was. That's how naive I was when I walked into the Spiritualist church. And I remember this lovely lady called Sheila Smoothie. What a lovely name that is, isn't it? Sheila Smoothie. Sweetest lady you could imagine. She'd been president at our church for 20 years. And she said to me, would you like some healing? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I'll give it a go. I don't know. What is healing? And her and some healers, they kept that church open to 11:30 at night just for me. Now, again, when we think about healing, it is actually the jewel in the crown of spiritualism. It really is. And I think all forms of mediumship, whether it's speaking here today, which is, we're speaking on the mediumship, and then you've got the hands-on, you've got the healing mediumship, and then obviously you've got the demonstration of mediumship. So again, when we think about the healing, what we do is the jewel in the crown of spiritualism. And that's such a wonderful provision to have or to receive. So going back onto my story there and saying, that they kept the church open, what it made me do, it made me want to give back that love and that care to other people, to be of service to mankind. So my life has changed a lot over the last 14 years. And I'm not perfect. Really far from it. None of us are. We can only really ever do our best in this world. And really, when we think about those basic principles, one of our principles within our the English spiritualism is personal responsibility, which I think, that is a really good principle to follow, is about personal responsibility, that we are responsible for every word, every deed, and every thought that we have. That is personal responsibility. We're responsible for our family until they get to a certain age, and then they're obviously responsible for themselves. But life is ever changing, isn't it? Life is ever changing. I'm not the person that I was 14 years ago. I'm not the person I was 10 years ago. I'm not probably the person that I was a week ago, because we're all learning something different. We're all learning to evolve. I'm going to say another principle is eternal progress is open to every human soul. So think about that, eternal progress being open to every human soul. So really, when we think about that progress can begin here and now. It doesn't matter what we've been through in the past. You draw a line under it, you start a new day. And each day that we wake up, we are thankful and grateful for having another day. Because not everybody in this world gets to live a long life, do they? So I think, sometimes we can, whether it's illness, whether it's circumstances, it can really bog us down in this life. It can get on top of us. But actually, it's to be thankful for a new day. Thankful maybe to make a difference in somebody else's life. We're not going to save the world, are we? We can't save the world. But an act of kindness might actually save the world for one person. So showing those acts of kindness, showing, a little bit of graciousness with somebody can really make a change to their life. It's like we don't know when we walk along the street and you say good morning to somebody, we don't know that maybe they've not spoken to somebody for a while. Maybe they live in their own. Maybe there's loneliness within them. So really showing that act of kindness and saying hello and letting them be seen is something very important. Just a smile at somebody could make a real difference to somebody else's life. So life is forever changing. When we think about the seasons, nothing ever stays the same. Nothing can. It's forever evolving, ever changing. Now, obviously in England we have 4 seasons. You probably don't get that in Florida. We have the freezing cold. But mind you did have a bad January. I was looking, so it's freezing cold, but not the freezing cold where you get snow and So again, we can have 4 seasons all in one day in England. But again, it can do all sorts. It can be sunny one minute and raining the next, and maybe a bit of snow. But So again, life is forever changing. Life is forever evolving, and I think it's really important to sometimes we just have to go with the flow of life. We just have to not be resilient to those changes. Really, maybe we hit them head on. How am I going to deal with this? What can I do? How can I change this situation? Another thing to note is that we can't change another person. We can't. We can maybe encourage them. We can maybe be that good example, but the change has to be from them. So sometimes, it's okay to maybe, if we can't control something, and it's to stop stressing over things we cannot control. Because again, when we think about, if we stress a lot in our lives, that can bring about other problems. So it's to getting rid of those stresses and understand, actually, we can't change that situation. What is the point in giving it the energy? What is the point on that? I know within my life, I've had to walk away from stressful situations. I've had to say, personal responsibility lies with them. I cannot change that situation, no matter how much I put the effort into stressing. It's not going to change. All it does is, it eats away at your own soul. So sometimes you have to give it back to somebody else and let it be their stress, because you're not going to change it. So that's where I'm saying that we all have choices. We all have choices to change. We all have choices to make our lives better. Now, it sounds like I'm talking from a perfect world, doesn't it? It really does. And life, I say, isn't perfect, but we can only do our little part in this world, our little part to make it special for us. Happiness is an inside job. So to bring about that happiness, it can only come from ourselves, and then we can irradiate that happiness. And then there is also the law of attraction. Like attracts like. Again, if we're in this world, if somebody cuts you up on the motorway and you've just cut me up, just send them love. Okay, you may be having a bad day. I'm not going to judge you. Send them love. Okay, love and light. Whatever you want. But again, if you start stressing about it and having that little bit of road rage, they've ignited something. But we don't know what they're going through. We don't know. Maybe they've just lost somebody to the spirit world. We don't know their circumstances. It's about not judging another until you've walked a mile in their shoes. So again, we don't know. Just send them love, because then that law of attraction, the more we put out that feeling of love and giving off that energy there. If we're negative and we have negative feelings, we're just going to attract that negativity. So it's all about changing our mindset. As Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So I'm just going to leave that with you now. That when we got a pebble in our shoe, we have the choice to remove it, or we have the choice to walk through life letting it irritate us.